couple of voices on this. Nick Buckley first, former Manchester mayoral candidate and author. Afternoon to you, Nick.
Good afternoon.
Now, of course, we've spoken before, and I remember at the time, you know, you went for this and thought, I'm going to give it a go. You got a fair amount of votes, though. You got tens of thousands of people turned out and put their cross next to your name.
I did. I was the only independent candidate, self-funded my campaign, and I came third. Yeah. I beat Reform, the Greens and the Lib Dems. Tories just beat me, and Andy Burnham was way ahead of everybody in the pack.
Sure. What do you make, firstly, of Mr Burnham as the mayor?
He's done nothing. He's done absolutely nothing in Greater Manchester. He promised to end rough sleeping in 3 years. He's had 8, and it's just as bad now as it was 8 years ago. He's kept his head down in Greater Manchester. Andy Burnham has always wanted to be Prime Minister, and he took the role of Mayor of Greater Manchester to get away from Corbyn in case that went crazy and went south. And then he's built his reputation in Greater Manchester, just like Boris Johnson did as the Mayor of London. And he's always wanted to come back at the right time, become Labour leader and become Prime Minister. And that's a fantastic aspiration. Yeah. I mean, good for him to want the top job. But things have gone pear-shaped recently, A, for Labour and for Keir Starmer. But his biggest hindrance now is not only that Starmer doesn't want him in Parliament because he's going to stab him in the back, but Reform UK are on the scene now, and there is no more safe seats for Labour. Andy Burnham doesn't even know if he can win a by-election. That's his big worry.
Yeah. Well, what would happen then if... Clive Lewis, who we've been talking about, is talking about vague. I mean, he obviously feels very... I don't know whether Clive Lewis owes Andy Burnham some money or something, but he's being very generous. He's, I'll give up my entire parliamentary career. I'll stand aside so you can sit there in Norwich South and become an MP, and therefore you've got a journey to becoming Prime Minister. I mean, what's your assessment of that?
If you was Clive Lewis, wouldn't you want the Prime Minister of these United Kingdoms to owe you a massive favour? We're looking at knighthood. We're looking at being given a safe seat in a year or two. We're looking at a ministerial role once he gets us. I mean, I'd want the Prime Minister to owe me a massive favour.
So you think there's he's playing a bit of a long game here on this one, Mr. Lewis? Yeah, and that wouldn't be unusual. I totally see where you're coming from on that. In terms of Andy Burnham, then, I mean, he's got what, until next May?
He has. If Andy Burnham can get to Parliament, then I would put money on him being Prime Minister and replacing Keir Starmer. That's a given. Not because Andy Burnham has better policies and a better vision and is a better politician. Andy Burnham has one thing that hardly anybody on the Labour front bench has, including the Prime Minister. He comes across as human.
I was about to say exactly that. That is his, if skill set is the right thing, in a world where we struggle to find politicians who speak or don't speak like some kind of pre-programmed robotic mechanism. He does quite well out of that. You know, working class boy from Aintree sounds accessible, right?
He does. He can think on his feet. He's obviously clever. He can speak to an audience. He doesn't need preset questions. He's a polished politician, that side of things. Yeah. But my point is this: how low have our politicians fallen that we're picking leaders of the country not based on intelligence and vision and policies and hard work? We're basing it on now, does he sound human? That's how far our politicians have fallen.
Indeed. I mean, you need a bit of that, of course, and the world we live in these days, you know, it's a multimedia, 24/7 news cycle, social media thrown in as well. You kind of got to have a bit of something. Mr Starmer hasn't really got it. You know, Wes Streeting kind of has it in that respect. Kemi Badenoch hasn't got it. Robert Jenrick has a little bit. You know, there's all of this, but so you need some of that. But at the end of the day, no matter how much gloss you can put on it, and you can make references to watching Strictly or Traitors, and that does sell very well in a little soundbite here and there, that you understand what ordinary people do. You get rumbled quite quickly, don't you, after people soon realise you've done naff all or you've not done anywhere near what you promised.
Absolutely. So let's talk about one thing that Andy Burnham has talked about recently, to make sure is in the news for leadership. He said to get out of our economic problem at the moment, we probably need to spend an extra 30 to 40 billion pounds of investment and borrow that money, and that'll help us get out of our financial problem. That's a very socialist answer to a very real problem.
Sure.
His answer is we need to go into more debt to get out of debt. He would be a disaster for the country.
Yeah. Well, we will see if Mr. Lewis buckles or moves. But in the meantime, Nick, thank you very much indeed for your time. Nick Buckley, he was a candidate at the last mayoral elections, and he came third, which was quite impressive. Gideon says, could it be the Lib Dems that actually take Clive Lewis's seat if it was vacated? Well, it might do. They didn't do so well. In fact, the Greens did come second in that seat last time around, which is what I think our previous messenger was alluding to. But it is a fairly safe Labour seat. But look at what's happened in terms of voting intentions and where people are thinking about going, whether it's the Greens doing well on the left or Reform doing well on the right. Let's speak to Neal Lawson, Director of Compass, founded as a Labour Party ideas pressure group that was democratically run by members. Neal, good afternoon to you.
Hi, Ian.
Nice to have you with us. Look, I mean, we live in interesting, almost soap opera times when it comes to politics, and it's great to have that bag of popcorn, whether it's Labour, the Tories, Reform, Green, whoever it happens to be. Never a dull day, really. How significant do you think this sort of row is between those in Labour that want Mr. Starmer out, namely Clive Lewis? There are some others, and many don't publicly put their name to it. Is this something that the Labour front bench need to be seriously looking at, or will it just blow over?
No, it's not going to blow over. It's not going to blow over because the fundamentals of Labour's position are so serious. I would, the existential word is being used by everyone, and not just people who are seen to be on the left, like me or Clive Lewis, but by Andrew Marr, in the New Statesman this week, saying this could be the end of the Labour Party. It only got 34% of the vote in the last election. That polling position is now halved. It's losing council seats by astronomical numbers across the country. Yep. It lost dramatically in Caerphilly a few weeks ago, a bedrock seat. It's polling, 79% think it's got the wrong economic policy. Keir Starmer is minus 60 odd percent. These are the worst, ratings. Yeah. Ever. It's lost over half of its membership. Could be the end of the party. And every government has difficult midterm, problems. But the real issue, Ian, is that they don't have a plan to get themselves out of it. Yeah. And Starmer, everyone knows Starmer doesn't have a plan to get out of it. So it's a question of when, not if. And the whole debate in Parliament and in the media and in the lobby is about when he's going to go. Everyone knows it, and then in public people come out and say, oh no, we shouldn't be having this conversation. Yes. And they're being hypocritical because everyone knows it's got to change.
Yeah, I was talking to one Labour supporter quite recently, in the last couple of days in fact, who was saying it's like the Labour Party are currently experiencing what the Tory party experienced, but after 14 years. And it does in many respects, because they've discombobulated. The Tories are kind of nowhere, and, frankly, they've only got themselves to blame for all of that. But Labour never had this honeymoon period. There was never any great moment. Half an hour into his administration, Keir Starmer decided to take away winter fuel allowance and goodness knows what else. And that one announcement kind of did set a tone, I think.
It did, because Labour is supposed to be the party of fairness and social justice. And when you do something which really undermines that whole position, it's like the Tories on their claim for economic competence. Yeah. When you've lost that, rock that you sit on, then you've got all sorts of problems. But they hadn't done their homework across a whole range of issues. We're seeing it now in the NHS. We're seeing it across the piece. And there was the Institute for Government this week said, literally that they never prepared for government. So they're in a mess. And until we have a plan and someone with the leadership to meet the scale of that challenge, which might bring us back into the conversation about Andy Burnham. See, unlike your previous guest, I actually think he does have a plan. He has been thinking about this stuff. He made a speech to my conference earlier in the year that set out very clearly the basis for a new economy, how you rewire the state, how do you build trust in politics again. I think he has been thinking about this stuff, and and so that's a very good reason why he's probably, I think, the only person out of the possibilities who could meet the scale of the challenge that Labour and the country face, and that's why people like Clive Lewis and others are in favour of trying to find him a way into the leadership of the party and the country, so that he can help us meet that challenge.
I hear that, and I can understand that it's quiet with Keir Starmer. I would slightly counter it, Neal, by saying, well, it's Andy Burnham, who's Health Secretary and had a few, front bench roles, but he's not JFK or Margaret Thatcher. It's Andy, and for some people they would say, well, yeah, he's not a big household name. I know that's hard, for those of us, as you would as well.
He is a big household name.
Well, he kind of is among Labour people, among people like
me. Across the whole country.
Nobody knows who Andy Burnham is.
If they don't know who Andy Burnham is, they don't know who anyone else is, because he is the only politician in the country, the only one who polls positively. No one else does. That puts him in quite a remarkable position, doesn't it? That he's the only person that the country thinks of positively. Now, that is an amazing attribute.
What would that be based on? Because I'm not being facetious when I say I don't think most people would know. If you asked my sister who Andy Burnham is, she wouldn't have a Scooby-Doo who Andy Burnham was.
Well, she might not know who Shabana Mahmood is, or Wes Streeting, or anyone else. But look, if you look at his track record of he's been in the cabinet, he's gone to Manchester, he's gone through big change experiences like Hillsborough, and the blood scandal. He's managed Manchester. Today, the thing he's doing is showcasing the fact that Manchester is the fastest growing place in the country, and he's trying to spread that growth out, what he's calling good growth. He's, brought the buses into public ownership. He's reduced the cost of transport for people. He's trying to build houses. He's hit a ceiling of what you can do without the right powers. And again, as your previous guest says, he has that magic ingredient, which is authenticity. People like him because he's got the vision, but he's also got that sense of normality. You'd like to go for a drink with Andy Burnham. Now, that's a pretty winning hand. Why does the Labour Party not want the most popular person with the plan to be its next leader? That's the question that should be asked of the senior people in the Labour Party, not of Andy Burnham. Why don't you want the person that could stand up to Nigel Farage and stop us, the country, drifting into that direction?
I mean, he does. You're absolutely right. But I mentioned Wes Streeting earlier, and Wes is the kind of, again, sort of has that accessibility thing. He can talk, he has cultural references that people understand, he can joke about watching Celebrity Traitors, and many people, even on the right, tend to think he's not doing the best job in health, because, as you rightly said, there wasn't a big enough plan to start with, but he's doing better than many other departments are. He has that, but are we then in danger of just dining out on a personality?
No, and that's why I go back to, I think Wes is very good on his feet, and if you want a kind of very clever, entertaining TV host, I think Wes would be a brilliant one of that.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's got a plan. And if he's got a plan, it involves bringing in Palantir, BlackRock, Oracle into the health service, and I don't think that's the answer. The most important thing is that Burnham has a plan around the economy, around the state, and around changing politics. I don't think Wes has that. I mean, I think personality, as everyone's saying, matters, but the most important thing is the plan, and Burnham has a plan that will change this country and put it back on the right track.
I mean, what sort of plan would that be, though, Neal? I mean, I've not heard of a plan. Maybe there's something in the inner circle that you're more privy to than me. I mean, I appreciate that he'd go, well, I wouldn't do what Starmer has done, but is there some deep-rooted philosophical burning furnace of ambition that he's had it in his back pocket, walking around with this format for years, saying, if only I had the big job, I could do all of this? Is it that?
Well, I think, he made a speech to my organisation, Compass's conference in May, to about 500 people, and he set out there the fact that this is going to take turning this country round, to invest in what he talks about is the fundamentals of people's lives. So have you got, an affordable, decent home? Have you got a proper kind of education and apprenticeship? Does the transport system work effectively for you? He's saying all these fundamentals of the things that made his life possible as that working class boy from Aintree. Is that, can we rebuild that stuff that will change people's lives? To do it is going to take 10 to 15 years. In order to build the cross-party consensus for that, we're going to have to bring in things like proportional representation and change the way the state operates. We're going to have to change the culture of our politics to stop it being so yaboo. He's talked about things like getting rid of the whip system and other ideas to open our politics up and out. He's learnt that in Manchester you have to build alliances with people. They never have a vote on their council. They always kind of come to a consensus by talking. So he's learnt a different kind of politics as well as the content. And I think that kind of thing puts him in very good stead. So I think he does have a plan, he does have a vision, and he does have the personality to put all of that stuff in place.
OK, just a final question, Neil, briefly, if we can. When do you think Keir Starmer will walk the plank from number 10?
I don't know. These things are always protracted, and it must be. I feel personally it must be very difficult for the guy, because it must be becoming more and more apparent to him, and as it is to everyone around him, that he doesn't have the skills to do the job. I think he should think about what his legacy is, how there could be some kind of handover to someone else that was orderly, that wasn't some mad scramble, that he could say, look, I'll step down in the summer, but I will try and lead this ship steering in the right direction, in the right kind of way. Obviously, it's up to the party to decide who comes next. Let's have the biggest, fullest list of candidates. But let's work out first what the job is before we decide who the personality is. Okay. That's why I go back to the plan, the plan, the plan.
The plan, the plan and the plan. Neil, lovely to have you on. Great to speak as well. Neal Lawson is the director of Compass. That is a Labour Party, Labour Ideas pressure group. Great to speak with him. Thank you to Nick Buckley before that. Your thoughts?